So that's downtown Oakland, and this is going to be a video in response to the Pathless Path. I watched two of his videos, one on atheism and another one on science and spirituality, or spiritual practice. Um, and in the atheism video, he was expressing a frustration that I share, um, which is, while atheism denies the validity of religion, specifically of theistic forms of religion, it doesn't replace them with anything. The atheists will argue we don't need to replace um, a dogmatic set of belief systems that human beings have used to uh, fantasize about some objective meaning which existed, and put them as the center of the universe, the most important thing going on here in the natural world, the created world. The atheists would say, well, there is no ultimate objective meaning, so we're not going to replace religion with anything. And I think they're right about that, in a sense, because we're no longer going to be able to look at religion as if it were an objective meaning, as if it were something we could write down in a book, a set of propositions we could record, and then copy and hand out to everybody, that we're somehow never going to need updating, never going to need to be updated or changed or verified even, because the verification is the very fact that they are written in this book, which contains the truth. Obviously, meaning is never going to be that objective, because we're more complex today, we're more educated, we have scientific knowledge about certain aspects of nature, such as the billion-year extent of time, the infinite extent of space, and this doesn't fit into many of the medieval or even ancient stories that we've told to explain human existence. Now, this isn't necessarily so. We could still interpret the Bible in a very esoteric, mystical way, and find in it certain metaphorical truths, but the majority of people who believe in a Christian God aren't really open to that possibility. And of course, I think, though, that there are materialists who are just as dogmatic about their metaphysical belief system. An old-fashioned Newtonian materialism is just as dogmatic and sort of immune to contrary evidence as is 15th or 15th century or earlier sort of belief in Christianity or Judaism or Islam. Though I think Islam is a special case because the billions of Muslims in the world don't really live in a modern context. They don't live in a liberal, democratic society. They live in more of a theocracy. And so they don't consider, like most American Christians do, their particular worldview to be one choice among many possible positions. For them, for the Muslim world, secularity just doesn't make sense, because God, or Allah, is the very foundation of all reality for them. And there's no questioning that. There's no possibility for them of replacing a belief in this deity to the formal practice of some liberal system of constitutional law, where individuals have rights inalienable, which no authority can take away from them, regardless of what that authority's belief system may be. Of course, the very idea that we Westerners, we Americans, have uh, these individual rights, freedom of expression and religion and so on, and speech, that itself is a belief system. It's almost an internalization of Christianity. We don't um, believe in the mythology associated with Christianity. We live out that mythology in our own lives. Each of us becomes a god in a sense. The human subject in a modern uh, political context becomes the ultimate good, the ultimate meaning, the ultimate foundation of law, of economics, of everything. And that is a religious belief system, though we don't call it religious as secular democratic people, because we're actually living it. It's too close for us to recognize it as the easily objectified or objectifiable religion of fundamentalists who still believe the stories that created our lived experience. And see, so this is where it gets tricky, that the myth of Christianity then, of this divine, knowing, intelligent being becoming alive in a slightly reduced form in each one of us, is true in a sense, because most of us, moral people who think that society should, conform to certain standards, we have to assume that the individual matters, and we're creating something that science gives us every reason to scoff at and to dismiss, or at least a reductionistic form of science. So, we're left in a precarious situation as an atheist who only denies religion and doesn't replace its meaning-producing qualities with anything else. Um, a lot of atheists become, not a lot of atheists, probably some atheists become Buddhists, or some other form of esoteric form of religion where uh, literal belief in something isn't really the point, rather direct experience is the point. And this is still atheistic. It's just replaced uh, ultimate meaning with not another objective truth like the past religions, but not a subjective truth either, but a truth that transcends the boundary between subject and object, that reveals a pure experience underlying the division between the two. Um, and so, when we ask for evidence of the kind of spiritual truths that someone like Alan Wallace says are available to us, um, we're asking for a direct experience. Now, you can follow certain injunctions, certain rules, or follow the steps of a certain experiment and arrive at this pure experience, but it won't be objective. You won't have an easy experiment to follow that you can stand back from and observe from a distance. It will require your participation, which is why some atheists who are more reductionistic and materialistically oriented will say, well, then this isn't the kind of evidence that I'm willing to accept, because it's requiring what they would assume from their perspective to be a belief in a particular practice, because it requires that they act um, more so than, certainly scientists, physicists have to build particle accelerators, so they are acting to bring forth certain truths, but once they build it, the machine runs itself, and they can just stand back and collect data. And so it appears more um, empirical. But their very ability to know and to understand the information they get back from this huge machine that they built requires that they participate in thinking about it. So their consciousness is always involved with this so-called objective knowledge that they're gaining. And spiritual practice is an attempt to allow us to realize the unity of the object which they bring forth and their action in bringing it forth.